Hi everyone, this is Miss Flores and we are going to review our science lesson. So if you can remember, last week our science lesson was on food chains. So this week we are reviewing food chains again. It's an extension from last week. So if you can remember, I was eating something that was extremely yummy. It was round, it was small. Do you remember? It was a beef jerky. So I was eating the beef jerky. That beef jerky came from a cow. The cow eats the grass or plant, and the plant or the grass gets its energy from it's in the sky, it's big, it's yellow, from the sun. So that is a food chain. There are many different food chains depending on where you're at. There's aquatic food chains, such as in the water. There's food chains, such as what you learned about and what you studied about last week was the hawk. And the hawk eats a frog. The frog eats a grasshopper. The grasshopper eats on grass, and the grass or plants get its energy from the sun. So that is a food chain. Okay, so this week we are going to do a different option on your choice board. So today we are going to be reading Grandpa's Farm. So this is in your reading science book, your workbook. So let's go ahead and read Grandpa's Farm. My grandpa has a farm in Michigan. I like to visit during every spring break. I am 9 and have been visiting there each year since I was 5. I like to go to the reed-covered pond. It is usually full of frogs. I like wading in the shallow water. I also like looking for frogs. Sometimes they hide in the grass and in mud. But I can always find them. Grandpa says I'm a frog expert. This year, when I went to Grandpa's farm, something strange happened. When we sat on the porch that first evening, it seemed too quiet. The raspy voice of the western chorus frog was gone. The high-pitched peeps from the spring peeper was gone too. Usually, we would hear all sorts of frogs singing. But tonight, we wouldn't even hear the loud quack of the wood frog. We couldn't even hear the low snores of the leopard frog either. Where are all the frog songs? I asked Grandpa. Grandpa frowned. Well, sadly, we haven't had a lot of frogs this year, he said. Why? I asked. There's an infection or disease that's been hurting the frogs, he said. Many of the frogs have died from the disease. I don't like hearing that. Does that mean I won't see any frogs while I'm down on the pond? You won't see as many as last year, he said. But there are other reasons that the decline in the frog population is bad news. Do you remember learning about food chains in school? Of course, I said. The sun creates energy. The plants use that energy to make food. The animals eat the plants. Finally, bigger animals eat the smaller animals. Of course, I said. The sun creates energy. The plants use the energy to make food. The animals eat the plants. Finally, bigger animals eat the smaller animals. That's right, said Grandpa. When one part of the food chain disappears, the other part gets out of balance. What do the frogs eat? I asked. They eat young mosquitoes. They eat before they can grow up to bite us. Fewer frogs means there will be more mosquito bites this summer. What eats the frogs? Large fish, and birds eat the frogs. The birds can fly to a new place to find food, but the fish in the pond are trapped. I have to feed the fish because so many have died. If I didn't feed them, the fish wouldn't have enough to eat. Can we do anything to help the frogs? I asked. Well, Grandpa said, at this point, there's no cure for the illness that is hurting the frogs. Humans can help by being careful not to bring animals from one part of the world to other places where they don't belong. That is how diseases are spread. Would you like to go to the university tomorrow? Asked Grandpa. We can visit my friend who is working to help the frogs. I was excited about the next day. I was going to meet someone who might be able to help my favorite animals, frogs. Okay, so if you can notice, this whole passage is similar to what's happening now with the coronavirus. Coronavirus, the way it's spreading, or the way it spread mainly was by people traveling from one place to another. When they traveled to one place, the infection or the disease was a lot there in that place. The person who traveled there got it. Person who traveled, when they traveled back to their home, they're spreading it, and now they're spreading it in their communities, and that's how it's spreading, similar to what happened with the frogs. So when one animal population, when the frog was removed, what happened? Who is affected? Or how is it going to be affected when the frogs were taken out? Well, if you can remember, frogs eat mosquitoes. So now there was going to be a bigger population of mosquitoes, and that meant more mosquito bites. But then it also affected two other animals. Who eats the frogs? The hawk, or birds, like we learned about last week, and the fish in the pond. So like Grandpa said, the birds can fly somewhere else. They have wings, they can fly somewhere else and still go ahead and eat and survive somewhere else. But can the frogs do that if they're in a pond? No, they can't swim anywhere else. So he needed to help them. That's how he needed to help to feed those fish that no longer had the frogs to eat. So let's go ahead and answer the questions. Let's look at number 1. Number 1 states, the passage is told in the first person, second person, third person, or none of these. So let's look at some key words. I'm going to go ahead and help you out. Let's go ahead and look at keywords such as we can visit my friend. Let's look at paragraph 18. I was excited. And my grandpa. So those are key words to answer your question. Okay, number 2. Which of these is an example of an infection in the 6th paragraph? Let's read the 6th paragraph again. There is an infection or disease that's been hurting the frogs, he said. Many of these frogs have died from this disease. So, is an infection, it's similar to a disease. Is it A, a broken leg, B, a headache, C, a flu, or D, a sprained wrist? An infection or a disease, which one of those options is a disease? A broken leg. A broken leg can happen to anyone. Can I pass that along to someone else? No. Same with a sprained wrist. That I can't pass from one person to the other. Or it's not an infection, it just happens if I get hurt. If you said C, a flu, you're correct. A flu, if I have the flu and I go to school and I'm sneezing and coughing on everyone else and touching you, then you're more than likely to get the flu as well. So that's an infection or a disease. Number 3, what belongs in the empty box? So you have 3 boxes, and that's following the energy of the food chain. So in one box, you have a young mosquito, the middle box is empty, and the last box, you have a large fish. So I have young mosquitoes, and I have a large fish, and I have an empty box in the middle. What eats young mosquitoes? And large fish eat that animal as well. Is it plants, frogs, birds, or the farmer? So what animal ate mosquitoes? Do you remember in the story? What animal ate the mosquitoes? It was taken out of the food chain. So when it was taken out of the food chain, they got sick and died. They weren't there to eat the mosquitoes anymore. And the fish in the pond were affected because they were not able to eat this animal anymore. Correct. It was a rabbit. It was the frog. So it was the young mosquito, the frog, and the large fish. Number 4. What caused the frogs to disappear? Was it the large fish and birds ate the frogs? B, all the mosquitoes were gone, so the frogs had no food? Did the frogs have no food because the mosquitoes were gone? C, the frogs got an infection? Or D, no one knows what happened to the frogs? So letter D is something that we can automatically toss out of there. That is some answer that is way off in outer space. No one knows what happened to the frogs. Yeah, we do know what happened to the frogs. They got an infection and died. Number 5. Which sentence is probably true about Grandpa? A, Grandpa doesn't care what happens to the frogs because he has other things to worry about on the farm. So, throughout the story, were you able to come up with that conclusion that Grandpa didn't care what happened to the frogs? In my opinion, I think Grandpa cared greatly about the frogs because he was even going to the university to his friend to help the frogs and the fish in the situation that was going on. So that doesn't tell me that Grandpa did not care. So I'm going to mark A off. Letter B. Grandpa wants the narrator to stay away from the pond because it is dangerous. I didn't hear that anywhere in the story that he was telling his grandson to stay away from the pond. Letter C. Grandpa has a lot of knowledge about the animals living in his farmland. Well, he does. He did know about all the animals and about the life cycles and why they were affected and what animals were affected. So I'm going to put a question mark because that could be a possible answer, but I still have to look at D. Grandpa wants to work at the university to try to find a cure for the frogs. Did it say anywhere in the passage that Grandpa wanted to work for the university? No. So your answer is C. So I hope you were able to get a better idea about life cycles in this passage and how if just one animal or organism, which was the frog, was taken out, everything else was disrupted, from the mosquitoes to the birds who eat the frogs to fish from the pond that eat the frogs as well. It disrupts the whole food chain.